Hello, my beautiful friends. I'm your host, Leah Cari.
And I'm Carrie Kenzie. Welcome to iShft Happens. Discover the leader within. This podcast is designed to disrupt the way you live, lead, and love. At iShft, we challenge traditional narratives and believe that inner wisdom is the key to every decision.
Are you ready to explore a new paradigm of both living and leading? We'll dive deep into our innate strengths as women: compassion, curiosity, intuition, grace, vulnerability, and love. The shift, it's about to get real. Rediscover the power within and transform your life. Stay tuned. It all starts now. Welcome, beautiful friends. This is iShft Happens. We are your hosts, Carrie Kenzie and Leah Cari, and we are celebrating something big today. So welcome to the conversation. And it's bigger than just our book launch. It really is. Return on Life is in the hands of our publishers, and we are hoping to have something here in the next couple of weeks to share, to show, and to have for any and all of you. And we are thrilled. But I think more so than book in hands is the invitation into your heart. It's that invitation that gets you up in the morning, knowing that there is more to this day than what existed the day before. It is an invitation to who you can be as opposed to who you've been. It is an invitation to lead from a different place as opposed to how you've led. It is a wake-up call, I think, to humanity on how we've all been showing up. And it is an invitation for another standard, a different standard, one that is more conscious, one that is more curious, one that is more courageous, one that is more caring and compassionate. And I believe that at the end of the day, that wake-up call is for us to feel full, to feel something more than we have felt before. And I think if you're listening to this and there is that something more nudge, whether it's, God, is this all there is? Or is there another level for me? Is there another level of growth? Is there another level of wealth? Is there another level of prosperity? Is there another of time? Is there another level? And the answer to that in all cases is yes. And the book really brings home all of those variables, and it invites you into that other level with research and our own experiences and questions and prompts. And so we're very excited about all of the work that we've done to get this book out and published, but it echoes a movement. It echoes what we're looking to bring into leadership, into each and every one of your homes and into each and every one of the businesses, buildings, structures that you bring your heart into.
Done. It was super exciting. But what an incredible experience to navigate through. I mean, this thing has been in the works for close to a year. I mean, and here we thought we were going to publish it, I don't know how many times, right? Oh, we're done. But the depth that needed to be brought forward in this book really continued to showcase itself to us through the depth of the work that we were individually doing as we navigated. And I don't know about you, but I would dive in to a certain section of the book to edit or to write, and I would find myself following prompts or shifting something a little bit differently. And these are things we know. These are things that we've taught, right? But all of a sudden I'm looking at it going, oh, crap, what happened to that component, right? What happened to that piece? And I shifted out of that for whatever reason, because we do, right? We're in a constant ebb and flow. And so I'm excited for this book to come forward, for other people to be able to get their hands on it. But I'm more excited, like you say, for the movement that this is stemming from and within. And I will tell you, just honestly, there was a hot minute, Leah, that I was like, okay, well, we were writing this book And the modern culture became like this birthed child in the fall. And I was like, is this like, does this still work? Does this, right? There was a piece of me that was like, does it still work? Does it still resonate? Is it like, should we be shifting and writing something different? And it is so perfect. Like, it's so perfect for the movement. And it's a perfect handbook. I mean, amazing book with all of the story and the resources, but amazing handbook and curriculum to continue our own personal growth because that's what leadership is. Leadership isn't about standing out in front of and guiding others. Leadership is about standing from within self, within the, community, within from a collaborative standpoint. I want to bring something forward because as the listeners don't know, this is our second shot at this podcast today. We'll just say because shift happens. You said something earlier that I wrote down and I was hoping that you would say it again and I was like, "Oh shoot," right? Because it's one of those things that just pops out and it's so brilliant. So I wanted to bring it back because as we look at this and as we look at this movement of the modern culture, and we look at this movement of creating conscious, compassionate leaders from the boardroom to the classroom and developing that within every single human, it shifts from
Hmm.
leading in fear, from a fear-driven to a fear-driven success to love-led leadership.
Mm.
And I loved that you said that because I was like, it's so beautifully articulated, like how I muddled it up there. But it's that fear-driven success versus the love-formed leadership.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can navigate beyond that to even see it is to dive within, is to look at everything that we've put forward in the book and that we put forward really in every single conversation that we have, right? But it's to come back home to that leader that sits within so you can see the space where you're currently residing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's so good. I think it was, and I think this is such a brilliant conversation, and it could be its own podcast. No, it will be its own podcast. But what makes like what's the difference if we were to whiteboard this, because that's how I operate, like what is fear-driven success versus love-driven leadership? Like how will our listeners know, right? Whether or not their success is fear-driven or if it's love driven.
So I was having a conversation with Miles yesterday, Leah, and he had asked this. Well, actually, I have a conversation with Miles that brought forward a conversation I had last week with a gentleman that I'm going to be doing a podcast with this summer. And it really was around this fear-driven success versus love-led leadership. And how do you know the difference? And how do other people really know the difference between the spaces that you're leading from? And so, one thing that I would say is you always have to look at underlying intention. You always have to look at underlying intention. But then, honest to goodness, unless you have had the ability or taken the time to hold the space for yourself, you won't know.
Mm.
You won't know. I mean, we had this conversation last week on a conversation you had with a gentleman who was leading from love. Didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know, right? And when we're leading from that space of people first, right? It's not something that we uh hold a sense of like huge pride in, right? Because it's not an ego-driven success means. Ego-driven is fear-driven.
Mm-hmm.
When we're leading from a place of people first, right? And we're having that conversation, then that really is love-led leadership. You don't know you're sitting in that space typically.
Mm-hmm.
Other people will. Other people will. And they feel it in a way of connection, of loyalty, of being connected with the mission, right? They want to come to work. It's that Sunday night feeling that they get before the Monday morning rise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you're coming from a place when it is fear driven success, that underlying intention is always going to come back to bottom line profitability.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to come back to your own security and stability. It's going to come back to, how do I hold this in place? How do I keep this all together? How do I? How do I? How do I?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
where you get that fear-driven success as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the love-led leadership. When you're love-led, you're looking to others in collaboration. How is it that we can pull this together? We're going to make this happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're going to do everything we can to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not, what do I have to do? What do I have to do in order to show up, in order to make this thing happen? Because I can't trust other people to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where your difference lies.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But when you give yourself the ability to hold space, which we require, quite honestly, of all of our leaders and of ourselves, we never require of anybody else what we don't do for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when we require that kind of space, it allows you to be able to really see that leader that sits within. It
Yeah.
allows you the ability to understand the energy that you're bringing forward. I share this from a space of, like, been there, done it. I was in fear driven success for years. For years. Nobody knew. They couldn't tell. You want to know why? Because that's how leadership's done.
Yeah.
That's how leadership's done. It's done from fear driven success. That's what people are accustomed to. They're
Mm-hmm.
accustomed to walking around on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you start leading from love that you get questioned, that people start to go, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
What is it that they want from me? Right? There's got to be a hidden agenda.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's, I mean, if that answers your question,
No,
that's
it
kind
does. It does. And so, yeah. And so if, you're listening, like, let me just try to summarize this in a pretty bow,
of,
right?
please.
Fear-driven leadership contrate co creates this manipulation, if you will, this control, this anxiety, this isolation, this separation, this feeling of division, right? But it's familiar. And so you don't really question it. And you wonder, like, God, you something doesn't feel right, but because it's so familiar, you assume that it's you.
Mm,
And love-driven leadership is all around, to your point, collaboration. It's what can we do versus what do I need? And trust in that is paramount. And then it's your ability to have the impact. And so I would look to organizations to ask, do you have the buy-in that you want? Do you
mhm,
have the level of engagement that you want? Do people feel safe? Do people feel seen? Do people feel heard? Do they feel appreciated? Have you asked?
mhm,
Or are you just assuming? Because
mhm,
no one's quit for the last month. Like, are we asking these questions? And how do other people want to be appreciated? Or are you just appreciating them the way that you feel or sense appreciation? And so
mhm,
that is what I would say. It requires a different level of connection. And some people just have it innately, and so they just make the assumption that they don't, and others, right? Others are very intentional about how they're showing up and what that looks like. And so that is what I would say as it relates to kind of that love driven leadership. And as it relates to this idea of more, this idea to a different standard of excellence. We talked about, what a modern culture leader is, and we teased in the return on life and the variables within that formula. But when we break these down, it's really about generosity over greed. And I think it would be an amazing experiment to really define what generosity means to you. What does it mean to be generous? What does it mean to be generous in your time? What does it mean to be generous in heart? What does it mean to be generous in spirit? What does that mean? What does it mean to be greedy? And I think once we define these for each other, we can attribute our behaviors to that fundamental distinction and really be able to invite ourselves into a more conscious way to lead? What does it mean to be collaborative over competitive? What does collaboration mean to you? What does it mean to your team? Have you asked? What does it mean to be collaborative as opposed to competition? And then what does it mean for you to truly love versus having fear? You will know the difference because of how it feels. Fear feels anxious. Fear feels panicked. Fear is full of ruminating worry and concern. Love doesn't feel that way, and you will know the difference. So that is kind of what we want to bring forward to you. We're not feeling beings, right? It's not familiar for most of us to take a pause, to take a beat and be like, what is this? What is
Mm-hmm.
this? What we're used to doing is, what is happening out here? What is going on with my teams? What's going on with my children? What's going on with tech today? Right? What's going on? We're so used to looking outside of ourselves to discover the answers that then would give meaning to how we're feeling. And we want to shift that up for you. We want you to come back into what it is that you're feeling, right? Not in judgment, not in blame, not in shame, but be like, does this feel aligned with calm, with presence, with care? Or does this feel panicked, urgent, impatient, frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Those feelings, those are fear-based feelings. Those are fear-based feelings.
Yeah. Yeah,
But we,
I would agree with that. The thing, and it's like I said, it's interesting, and we don't take that pause to question. So we don't understand the space that we're leading from, right? So I love that you kind of broke those things out a little bit as far as like, if it feels like this is coming from a place of fear. If it feels like this, it's coming from a place of fear. I would say if we wanted to shortcut the whole dang thing, because that's just kind of sometimes what I like to do, if you were just to shortcut the entire dang thing, if you're not asking the question, you're leading from a place of fear. If you don't know, if you're sitting there and you're like, gosh, I don't know, am I like leading from love, or is this like fear-driven success? Right? If you're not asking yourself that question, almost on the regular, you're leading from fear. You just are. Like you said, if you feel urgent, if you feel panicked, if you feel like this has to get done right now and I'm the only person who can do it, it's fear-driven success.
Mhm.
And the only way to get back to that is to begin to ask those questions. I mean, let's just look at today, Leah. We're talking about this. We've had how many tech issues that we can't even like, people would laugh at the amount of tech issues. So what do? You and I, because we're already doing it. Okay, what's going on here?
Uh-huh.
Here, not in
Here.
technology, right? What's going on here? Because we understand that we are powerful beings.
Hmm.
We are powerful beings. So if things aren't lining up the way that you desire them to, and I'm not going to say that everything's going to be easy when you're leading from love, it's not. Please hear me say that. And if you're looking for easy, you're stepping from a place of fear because you're just looking to get out of struggle. So it's not easy, but there's going to be a bit of ease to it,
Yes.
right? There's this bit of ease. Okay. So again, you've got to come back to like, okay, what is the thing that's not allowing this to be eased today? Because if I'm powerful, as we know, we are incredibly freaking powerful beings. The amount of stories I could tell you about the amount of healings that I've witnessed in people because they understand and know how powerful they are would blow your freaking mind. When you understand how powerful, you start to look at circumstances differently. And you give yourself the ability to go, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? What am I doing? How am I getting in the way?
Yeah.
Why do I need to ask them the question? I don't know. That's what I
No,
would say to that.
it is so good, and it full circles back to everything that we're doing. It's
Yeah.
understanding that the circumstance, the situation, whatever you want to label it, anything that's outside of here doesn't affect you without your permission.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in all of these variables that we're bringing forward to you in the book and the principles that we bring forward to you in this leadership training and this movement, it's all inside out.
Yeah.
It's all a reflection of how you can create next level relationships, next level health, next level purpose, next level spirituality, next level experiences, next level wealth, next level growth, next level energy, next level time,
Mm-hmm.
right? How
Mm-hmm.
you can create next level of all of those and mitigating, right? The constraints. So the
Mm-hmm.
whole, the ROL formula, the return on life, is really about optimizing, right? The variables on the top of the divisor, mitigating the denominator so that your return on life actually has something that you can see, that you can be intentional about in its creation. And
Mm-hmm.
same thing with the principles. It's all inside out. It's not how can I change things outside of me so that I can be more wealthy. It's not how can I change my team so we can have more profits in our business. It's how can I change the way that I'm showing up energetically to
Mm-hmm.
create wealth from within, to create profitability or success or whatever from within. Because what we know is there are lots of people that have this, what we're calling fear driven success, that are completely unhappy, that can't tell you the last time that they actually experienced joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if they do, I had this conversation yesterday with a client, they have to go to a lake house to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what would happen if you brought the lake house to your world?
Mm-hmm.
What does that need to look like? Because the only reason why that lake house is a creator of peace for you is because of the meaning by way of the thoughts in your mind that you give it. That is available to you right now. We don't have to go to a beautiful cabin on the lake to find peace. It's available to you in this next breath, should you choose it. That's the invitation of the book. That's the invitation of the modern culture. I That is the how powerful we are.
I
We are.
100% agree. I 100% agree. I think we have to stop escaping life in order to enjoy life. That's what I
Mm,
think. That's what came to
mm,
me when you were talking about the lake house. I was like,
mhm,
why do we have to continuously feel like we have to escape life in order to enjoy life?
mm.
It's just time to live life.
Yeah, and how many of us are doing that, right? Like
Yes.
on the regular, like if I can just get through the week to get to the weekend. If
Yes.
I can just get to spring break. If I can just
Yes.
get to the summer. Oh man. Once the summer gets here, there won't be as many schedules. And I
Yes.
want everybody to understand that the schedules don't affect you.
Mm-hmm.
Busyness doesn't affect you. Your to-do list doesn't affect you at all. The only reason it affects you is because you have given it meaning that is upsetting to you.
Yeah.
And that is all optional. And I don't like, we're not thought thieves here. You can choose whatever meaning you want to give to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the request is that you own the feeling that you get from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Leah. I want to go back
Yeah.
to the book here just for a minute if we can.
Yeah.
Like, because we just drove through that book, I don't know how many times, and again, for probably not the last time, of course, but for a final walkthrough. What would you say was the most significant part of that book for you, if any?
Mm, great question. Um, you know what I think, and this might be part of the cut that made it or not part of the cut that didn't, so I'm going to let our audience know what you had said that may or may not be on this recording, is as you were going back in and reviewing and creating transitions, and you were doing that on your end, and then I was doing that on my end, I would read it and we wrote it. And I would be like, oh my gosh, like some of the question prompts, like, and
Yep.
it felt like church to me, right? Like, oh my gosh, he's speaking to me. I was like, did I choose this chapter because I need this right?
Right.
And so for me, it's not it. it wasn't one chapter or the other, or wasn't this one epiphany or this one piece of research that we were able to pull in and footnote, or your experiences that were pulled out,
Mhm, mhm.
experiences that were pulled out. It's that I believe that it will continue to be a teacher for me as the
Yeah.
student. It will continue for me to sit by my bedside
Hmm.
so that I can open it up like I do a Bible and be like, okay, what am I supposed to learn here? And just trust that I open it up to the very part that might ask me a question or that might invoke a different level of responsibility on my part to step
Hmm.
into what my future demands me to be.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Well, I love that. I think there's so much that sits within that. And again, with that like continuous curriculum, we're always learning, we're always growing, and I need to continuously be challenged into it as well. And so to have that, right, to be able to pull forward as we did throughout the process of it, I mean, I completely shifted how I was operating my days just simply by looking at a particular chapter in the book. I was like, oh my gosh, I've slipped back into maybe some old habits. I will say though, one of the more interesting, maybe powerful insights that kind of came through as I was writing one of the chapters was really in that spirituality component. And I say that because it completely shifted how I thought about spirituality. Like that's an ever evolving topic for me, always has been, right? And as I was sitting and as I was thinking through and kind of meditating and allowing whatever needed to come through, it was simply that spirituality is a belief in possibility.
Mhm.
And that struck me.
Mm.
It really struck me because I think too often we dismiss belief as though it has to be in some big, huge thing,
Mhm.
when honestly, it's just in possibility.
Mhm.
Like, if you believe in possibility, you have the opportunity to really not just be able to see that outside of you, but to harness that from within you
Yes.
and to know that that possibility sits there. And I think, and I'm just feeling this in this moment as I'm saying this as well, that was what that was meant to teach,
Mhm.
is that spirituality is belief, and it's belief in things that we can't see, but it's a belief in the possibilities and ultimately a belief in the possibility of the self.
Mhm.
And that's where the work goes. That's where we are called back to, is to see, to open, and to evolve that possibility, to allow that expression to come from within.
Mhm.
And when we are fear driven success, we deny the possibilities
Yeah.
and we open it when we love in leadership.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
And I think that's a beautiful way to close out this this section because
Yeah.
I I believe that spirituality, in whatever way you define it,
Yeah.
um, is really about having faith
Mm-hmm.
in something that you cannot see,
Yeah.
something that isn't written, and you're not going to find it anywhere outside of you. And so the gift that we're giving you is an invitation home, because home is where you will find the answer.
I love it.
Love it.
I love it. So
Okay, my
good.
beautiful friend.
Thank you, love.
Thank you. Mwah.
We
Bye,
made it. We'll see
everybody.
you next week.
You have been listening to Shift Happens. Discover the leader within with Leah Rolling and Cari Kenzie, where we help you reconnect with your inner leader. Learn to trust your instincts and live with authenticity and confidence.
Tune in every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time to Shift Happens on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, inspiration, and actionable strategies to live and lead, not only in purpose, but on purpose. It is time to embrace a life and leadership style that is true to you. For more information, visit shift.life.